Believe it or not, come spring, all of this will be a lush meadow. And I have a painting of a meadow and meadow making in the house that I need to show you. The picture is over here, snuck in the corner, a meadow scene. It's almost like bringing the outside in. And it's a view of haymaking on Salisbury Plain. The date is about 1913. The artist, a little known painter called Dora Noyes, N-O-Y-E-S, and it was an illustration for a book on the history of the plain, which has a lot of culture and history attached to it, by an author called Dora Noyes. I bought this picture about 10 years ago, around about the time that I was really getting into trying to make our own meadows outside here work. Let me just describe precisely what we're seeing here. And it is a group of ladies in the traditional form of harvesting. What would happen is often the men would do the cutting, and quite often labourers at this time of year would be imported from other parts of the country, sometimes from Ireland in the case of Salisbury Plain, and brought in. And the women, beautifully dressed in this garb, slightly idealised, raking up the grass that's already been cut. And look what they're wearing. They've got this fantastic, almost, they look like sort of nuns' hats, which would keep off the sun and also preserve a little bit of modesty. The meadow area was a place of chatter, a place of social engagement. You would get children and families out there during the harvest. It was an extraordinarily busy time. So you were dressing not only for your work, but also for a type of human engagement that we're seeing here. But look at how Dora has used art and paint in order to extrapolate the poetry of the scene in front of us. Those colours, they're rather limpid, more like watercolour, except this is oil on panel. The pinks, the blues and the whites against the green background have a lovely sort of subtlety about them. They almost remind me, in fact, of the colour of wild flowers that you encounter in spring and summer. And then they've all got rakes, haven't they? They're all holding them. And if you allow your eye to follow the pointers of the handles, if you go up from the base to the top, you realise that Dora is taking you from right to left. This is almost like a gentle wave of colour and form. It's a lovely example of art and choreography mixing together. And it's interesting to note how over 500 years the haymaking process and the meadow has been a place that artists have visited. Look at these two paintings that I particularly admire. One is by Bruegel, the great landscape painter, the other by Stubbs, and both of them are rejoicing in the same thing that Dora is. I'm president of an organisation called Plant Life, the Wild Plant Conservation Charity. And we, throughout the country, try and engender and foster this interest in wildflowers. We've lost 98% of our traditional meadowland. But paintings like this remind you of what is possible. It's an obvious thing to say, perhaps, but sometimes it's just the subject matter, it's what's portrayed that is the reason people like to own art. And in this instance, this painting by Dora Noyes combines both the dream and the reality of this passion I have for meadows. And I want to use this opportunity, talking of cross currents, to thank Mariam Batsashvili, the celebrated concert pianist, who has allowed us to use her notes behind some of the scenes in this film. What I'd like to show you here is a clip of film of our own meadow a couple of years ago. We did have a wonderful prize in the form of an explosion of buttercup. Wherever you are in lockdown, take care. We'll be back next week, and having talked about meadows, I'm going to home in a little bit further and look at flowers.